the old saying that if you love your job, you never work a day in your life, that was definitely me. Ford City, I started there at 16. I basically grew up at Ford City. I went from a kid to a man, and it, it it was the greatest experience of my life. In the spring of 1972, I was a sophomore in high school at Bogan High School, and I started working there. I worked there all through the summer, and so they asked me, "What are you going to do? Are you going to college, or what are you going to do?" And I've already worked there now for a few years, and I knew the property real well and everything. And I was still only a high school kid. And I said, "Well, I was thinking to go to college." And they said, "Well, if you don't want to go to college, we'll get you to sign up and get you into Local 399, the Stationary Engineer Union, and you could work here. You stay here." And well, yeah, at that time, they were making what's equivalent to labor rates today. I said, yeah, sure. So I just stayed, and so I got to work with the engineers there, and they kind of took me under their wing. And of course, you've done all the dirty work, crawl in the boiler and clean this, or but to a kid, that's nothing, So I was just happy to do it. But it was to the point where it was so interesting, and the more I learned, the more they depended on me. I could literally draw a blueprint of that place from memory in my head. And then pretty soon I was working with guys that were as old as my dad. And the more I worked there, the more I enjoyed it. And they asked me, they said, "Would you like to become the operations manager and get out of the union?" And I said, "You know what? I'll do the work. You don't have to change my title. You don't have to give me any more money. I'll do whatever you want me to do," because it was a team player job, and it was that type of place. Ford City, the building itself, it's over 400 and some acres on the south side of Chicago. It was purchased by the government in World War II for the production of the B-29 engine for the plane, the Enola Gay that dropped the atomic bomb, the long-range bomber. They made those engines, the Wright Cyclone 3350R radial engine. It was actually operated by Dodge. The Chrysler Corporation owned it, and it was called Dodge Chicago Plant. And they had 48 test cells on the north side of the building. They're still there. If you ever go past there, you'll see the concrete structures. And what they would do is they would put the engines in there and run them, 48 of them at a time. And even back in the 40s, their technology, they had generators tied into those motors, so they would be able to, as they were running those engines, they would produce enough electricity to run the plant. And it had its own water reservoir later on when Ford took it over. The building was built in 18 months, the whole property. Every building, there's over 25 or 30 buildings there. The largest building, which is where the shopping center is, and Tootsie Roll, that building was the biggest building in the world, 82 acres under one roof when they built it, bigger than the Pentagon, bigger than the Merchandise Mart. After World War II ended, the plant closed, and the government still owned it. They leased it to Preston Tucker. And then Preston Tucker built 52 cars there, 48 Tuckers. And that car today is worth millions of dollars. I think there's only maybe 50 of them in existence. So after Tucker left in the late 40s, 49, then Ford Aircraft Engine Division for the Korean War, they took over the property, leased it from the government. They modernized it. They put a big engine test cell for the jet engines, big concrete structures, and they would test the jet engines there. And then Ford made several other engines, WASP engines and stuff like that. And they had it all the way up until the late 50s. And that's when Ford stopped their aircraft engine division. And that's when Harry Chaddock, who was a big developer in the city of Chicago, he was on the planning board and all that stuff. He purchased the property from the government, and that's when he turned it into Ford City Shopping Center and an industrial park. Ford City started to decline toward the mid-'80s, but in its heyday, it was something. Every single weekend, there was some kind of a marketing event. They had boats in the middle of the mall. They had salute to seniors. They had all kind of bands and you name it. There was always some kind of event, and it was such a neighborhood draw. The people would come there just to see what was going on, and that there were like hundreds of thousands of people for the grand opening of that mall. And, Mayor Daley, Richard J. Daley, was there, and he cut the ribbon and everything. And it was an exciting place to be. I enjoyed it. When I worked there, thousands of people, it was just a place to be. They felt safe there. It was a great mall. The shopping was great. All the restaurants, they didn't even have a food court then, but they had all these little restaurants, and it drew people there. It just, it was like a magnet on the South Side. It just, everybody that I come in contact with, almost everybody says, I have an uncle who worked there during the war. My aunt used to work there for Ford. My cousin worked there. My dad used to work there. This South Side of Chicago, that whole property, it drew this whole South Side to that area. I met my wife there. She worked in our office as an accountant, and we've been married 32 years. So, yeah, she came from Ford City too. So 47 years. I spent more time at Ford City than I did with my family. I never once working there as a job thought to myself, oh God, I hate this place ever. It was always interesting. It just was a great job. I mean, my goal was to be laid out in center court and people could come by and visit. That would have been my goal. I would have been more than happy to close my eyes at work. I mean, retirement's fun, but I loved that job.
Next week in O'Hare, a Gaslight girl gets more than she bargained for.
Oh my God, I give everybody movies, everybody.
From Superphonic Studios, this is Chicago. Listen every Sunday.